I can confirm Penn State has real, serious interest in Kalani Sitake as their head coach. What I can't confirm is what happens next.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I am your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network out there, your team every day. Jake Hatch of Locked On BYU Cougars is here. Ole Miss hired their defensive coordinator, Cal, Kentucky. Thoughts on those jobs on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So, Jake, you were at the press conference earlier today. Kalani Sitake was asked about the rumors tying him to Penn State, which I have been told are very real. This is not a smokescreen. Doesn't mean he's leaving. It does mean he is entertaining the possibility.
Yeah, and that's the thing about this. He essentially offered a no comment. It was probably the best way to go about it when asked directly about if he was talking to Penn State. And obviously that raises alarm bells for Cougar fans and really anybody who's covering this. But to your point, Spencer, I'm right there with you. There is genuine interest on the side of Penn State. I think there's vice versa, also some interest in Kalani Sitake in the Penn State job. But ultimately, who knows where this is going to go? And it feels like it's developing in some cases minute by minute.
This is another good example of, hey, this college football calendar's broken. Let's fix it, please.
Well, we're looking at the BYU football program essentially having the same thing happen to them that happened to Ole Miss, but with the caveat that, oh, by the way, BYU plays a game this week, Spencer. They play in the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah.
Ole Miss doesn't have to play in a game. They obviously are just kind of waiting the decision from the playoff committee about where they're going to be slotted. BYU has a game on their docket, and it's the biggest game probably in program history since maybe 1996, 1984, some of the big years of yesteryear for BYU football. And, oh, by the way, they have a head coaching distraction taking over here.
Yeah, it's certainly not what you want to have surrounding your program. Questions coming to the head coach. We know players are going to hear that stuff. It's the age of mass media. It's just inevitable whether you like it or not. And I don't, because I'd rather the focus be on the games this week. I don't know if I'm going to talk about the conference championship games on my show this week, Jake. I don't think I'm going to get to it. Well, I got 5 shows a week on this program. That's 15 segments. I don't know where I'm putting in segments talking about football. Why would we do that?
And that, to your point, that shows exactly why you're right. The calendar is broken when it comes to college football, but I just don't think there is a ready-made fix for it because, let's be honest, the people that pushed for these changes that are causing this are the coaches themselves. So they only have themselves to blame in many respects.
I can't imagine they enjoy this. I can't imagine that collectively they came together and said, yeah, this is what I want. Like Lane Kiffin wants to be in that spot. Sitake wants to be. I seriously doubt that.
You think about this. They have the early signing window, so they get players in on campus as early as possible. They have pushed the transfer portal around to different spots in the calendar. They've also forced the hiring situation to be when the season ends, that's hiring season. And that's the unfortunate part about this. It feels like just kind of the amalgamation of different changes, not all of them all at once, but the changes that coaches ultimately wanted at different times have come together to coalesce and create this firestorm that is really, really bad problem.
Except hiring season is right now because Bob Chesney is going to UCLA. And I did want to get to that angle of this because with him going there, I was told that he was one of the candidates for the Penn State job. I don't think he's taking the UCLA job, which is nowhere near as good of a job as Penn State. It kind of should be, but it definitely isn't. I would rather be the head coach at Penn State than at UCLA. Yeah. Is it a better job than people think? Probably. But is it a great job? No, not compared to Penn State. I don't think he's accepting that offer, which he has and is going to do whenever James Madison's postseason run comes to an end, unless he's been told, we're not hiring you, which tells me the full court press for Kalani Sitake is incredibly real.
Yeah, I'm with you on that because, he wouldn't be taking the UCLA job if he was in the mix for Penn State. I've got no problem agreeing with you on that. So, it does feel like the attention and many reporters out there are pointing to this, that Kalani Sitake is Penn State's top target.
So for his decision,
Mm-hmm.
I've thought about this from a couple different angles. This, I think, is the most prominent one I keep coming back to. Obviously, Sitake, who's LDS, is in a place that he really enjoys, loves BYU. But I wonder, and this is not right, because in my rankings, Jake, BYU is into the playoff, win or lose this week. I will never waver on that. An 11-win regular season Power 4 team, so long as you're playing a certain number of Power 4 opponents on there, you don't have 8 conference games and 4 cupcakes, whatever. As long as you're there, which BYU is, I'm putting you in the college football playoff. I will never advocate anything else. So I think BYU should be in. The committee, of course, doesn't see it that way. And I think the one thing, as much as I do truly believe that Sitake loves being in Provo and loves being BYU's head coach, the one thing that I could see pushing him over the edge is I just won 11 games and I have to beat the number 5 team in the country to get in the playoff. Whereas if I go to Penn State, I'd probably have to win 10 games to make the college football playoff. And that, at a job that is really not far removed from being one of the premier programs in the country, that does make Penn State more appealing than BYU.
No, and Ted, I'm with you out there. I think that's absolutely part of the calculus that Kalani Sitake is ultimately weighing on this, because to your point, he's looking at this saying, what in the world do we have to do to make it into the playoff? No questions asked, despite winning 11 games at the Power 4 level. We're, essentially being forced into a corner where you either beat Texas Tech or we're leaving you out. And that's unfortunate that BYU's in that situation, but I think exactly what you said. He may be looking at it and saying, hey, Penn State, even though we finished second or third in the Big Ten behind Ohio State or Indiana or anybody else that's at the top of that league, we're still probably pretty comfortably in the field winning 10 games. So, it feels like he's absolutely weighing that option in all of this.
Do you think he's going to take the job? This might have changed, by the way, by the time this show airs. We waited till the last possible minute on Monday night to get this recorded and out there, and it feels like it changed 7 times over the last 3 hours, because I was told around, I'd say 3 p.m. by someone, he's leaning towards staying. And then all of a sudden, there were several reports that came out of, boy, they're really making him their top target. Boy, he's entertaining the idea. There's an offer from Penn State. There's an offer that's matched from BYU. Penn State's up. This has been, of all the coaching carousel madness, this has been some of the craziest stuff.
I need to go to the chiropractor for the whiplash I have endured. But to answer your question, I believe that Kalani Sitake, in his heart of hearts, wants to be at BYU, and he will give them every opportunity to make it worth his while to stay. But he will keep that leverage that he has with whatever Penn State's interest is, whether it's a formal offer, whatever they're talking about. He will use that as leverage to make sure that he is set up for success, no matter if he's in State College or if he's remaining in Provo, Utah.
Should the worst come to pass, this is a dark note to leave on for this segment, but it's where we're going.
Yeah.
If the worst comes to pass for BYU and he goes to be the head coach at Penn State and they don't make the playoff and it all just comes crashing down in brutal fashion, where would BYU look for their next head coach? Because it's not a typical coaching search.
Well, let's just put it this way. They already have him on staff. It's Jay Hill. He's a member of the LDS Church. He's the associate head coach. He's been a head coach with incredible success, albeit at the FCS level. But I'm telling you, they already know who the guy is, and it should only take him 5 minutes to announce that if this does go down that path.
That was the first thought that popped into my head as well, and I was wondering if you had the same, because I've watched Jay Hill coach football teams before, and it was at the FCS level, but man, since he's left Weber State, I noticed that program hasn't been quite as successful.
Look at Weber State before and after Jay Hill and tell me that there is a common denominator in all of it. Oh, yes, It's Jay.
Yeah, I wondered if that'd be the case. So I don't want it to get there because I think this all stinks, but man, it's very possible. Jake Hatch, Locked On BYU, great as always. Ole Miss, well, they did what Jake suggested. They just said, all right, defense coordinator, slide over, one podium up, head coach. What do we think about that? First, this episode brought to you by Omaha Steaks. The holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift, and Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to their door. And this week is the best time to jump in because their cyber sale is here and the deals, well, I'll tell you how big they are later. But first, know that you are getting what you're looking for with Omaha Steaks. The quality is exactly what you want. Incredibly tender steaks, rich flavor, and meals that make hosting or weeknight cooking easier, which during this time of year, when I'm super busy, that's something that I really value. Omaha Steaks is here to help you with that. And get ready for this. Save big on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And for an additional $35 off, use the promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code COLLEGE, terms apply. See site for details. Check them out at omahasteaks.com. Just in case you missed it, Lane Kiffin isn't the head coach at Ole Miss, but Pete Golding is. Their defensive coordinator, Stephen Wills of Locked On Ole Miss, is here. Did that surprise you, Stephen, that they just said, okay, here you go, not interim, just full-time head coach? Because how it read to me was it was the convenient way to give yourself the best chance to win in the playoff as Ole Miss is having their best season ever by not giving him the interim tag. And I still feel like there's a thought in the back of their mind, this is going to be a potentially short-term ordeal where he has the opportunity to earn the head coaching job for the long run.
No, I think they generally are hiring him as the permanent head coach. He is crazy respected around Oxford, Mississippi. He was the coach in waiting behind Lane Kiffin. That's been known for a couple of years, and now I think he's the second highest paid assistant coach before all of this. So they obviously thought very well about him. So listen, the question in this thing will be, can he put a team together and all that for 2 weeks and get everything organized to go out for a playoff game and win that game on December 19th or 20th? That is the question. The biggest football game potentially in the state of Mississippi history is going to be December 19th or 20th. So the question is going to be whether he can find the offensive coordinator that calls the plays. Many people think it's former NFL coach Joe Judge going to call those plays. He's the quarterback coach at Ole Miss. But it could be Charlie Weiss, who's down at LSU. He could come back and coach for the playoffs as well. I think that is the most important hire that Ole Miss needs to make as an assistant coach right now, because they have a big analyst staff that can handle all that. Pete, a smart guy, loves Oxford, Mississippi. He's an Ole Miss guy through and through. If you just look at pictures of him, you just say, okay, yeah, Ole Miss. That's the way he comes across. So we'll see. It is kind of funny to me that Lane Kiffin leaves and gets $14 million and never has coached a playoff game, and Pete Golding is going to coach one in his very first game as a head coach.
That is a wild dichotomy to think about. There are so many angles to talk about this because it has been such a drama-filled endeavor over the last several weeks. It's finally, of course, come to a point where we know everything that's taking place, but Pete Golding is a head coach who's, by the way, been the Ole Miss defensive coordinator for several years, been the Alabama defensive coordinator for several years. He's a first-time head coach. It's not to say that he doesn't have the resume to be named a head coach in the SEC. Of course, Kirby Smart was Alabama's DC and then became the head coach at Georgia. It seems to be going pretty darn well as they'll play in the SEC championship game this week, which I think I'll talk about at some point this week on the show. I might not have enough time. So going forward, Stephen, and really it's right now and going forward, like every moment, every second feels important for the recruiting, the roster retention. Where is Pete Golding's top priority in your view?
I think right now is getting everything in position for stability for the college football playoff. So the playoff committee knows that that's going on, that is very much aware of what's happening. I think he's starting to preliminary look at hires that he is going to look long-term for offensive coordinators. Does he want to run the same offense in 2026 as Ole Miss is running right now? There's probably some paths to go. Or do you want to change it up just a little bit? Do you want to make the defense be the most important part of the team? All of that is what he's working on. But right now, I think he's trying to put Ole Miss in the best possible position they can be in for a playoff run, because this is unprecedented. They legitimately are a 4th and 2 missed tackle away from being 12-0 and number 2 in the country. And all of this drama is going on. It's absolutely nuts to think of. And if anybody can do it, it's going to be Pete Golding. Keith Carter has been basically a gangster through all of this. And it's something that he saw what was going on. He reacted early. He knew exactly how to handle it. His team of advisors and all of that. He basically cut this off at the pass and didn't allow it to become a bigger situation that it actually became. And Keith Carter deserves all the credit for that.
What's the mood in Oxford right now? And then we'll talk about the playoff.
Excitement because of the playoff. And whenever Pete Golding got named, it allowed the fan base to immediately turn and start concentrating on that football game. And as you all know, whenever something's going on, it always helps when you have something to focus on. And that playoff game, there's going to be 70,000 people in that stadium. It's going to be a madhouse. It's going to be absolutely raucous. And right now, every Ole Miss fan is looking forward to that and a playoff run potentially.
And yet it is going to pale in comparison to the scene in Oxford next year when LSU head coach Lane Kiffin comes to town. I've already mentioned that on the show. I don't know if there is a regular season game, Stephen, that may or may not have playoff implications. It certainly could. It might not. I don't know if there is a regular season college football game I have ever covered in my time working for this network that is going to be as anticipated by me personally as that matchup. Because the drama in that, I don't even know what to expect. I think the police presence is going to be unprecedented. It should be, because I not that it should get to this point, but man, that could get to be a wild situation.
Yeah, if you thought the 2021 Lane Kiffin return to Neyland Stadium in Tennessee was big, that was like 10 years after the fact, after he left. It had a chance to cool down a little bit. This is like 10 months after the fact, coming into Oxford. Now, by the way, LSU goes to Tennessee as well. So there's some hatred going to be able to happen both ways on that. But yeah, it's going to be absolutely massive. It might look like an Argentinian soccer game as far as police presence and riot gear down there in front of the play. It's absolutely nuts. I mean, get your condiments now, figure out what you're going to throw, and then see how it's going to go.
That's one way to look at it for sure. And you know what? Lane Kiffin will probably ready to just grab another water bottle or two. Not that that's acceptable behavior. It just feels
not at all. Not at all.
It is not. It just feels inevitable. Can't control everybody. Let's talk about the actual playoff game. We're recording this before the rankings have been released on Tuesday night. So I think that for me, Ole Miss shouldn't move up or down because of the win, because of Lane Kiffin's departure. All the players are the same. I think you have to reward them for that in this 12-team model. And look, I was in favor, because it was a 4-team playoff, of not putting Florida State into the college football playoff. And not everybody agrees with that. Do you think Ole Miss will at all be punished because Lane Kiffin isn't their head coach and Pete Golding's first game is going to be a playoff game, probably, by the way, in a game where he's going to be favored? Because in all likelihood, I think the most likely scenario, we'll see what happens in conference championship game weekend. Oregon and Ole Miss won't move. They will host playoff games, and they will play the ACC champ and the Group of Five champ, and they will be probably sizable favorites in those matchups. Again, that's most likely.
Yeah.
Most likely.
Yeah, or the Group of Five champ and the Group of Five champ.
Yeah. I'm discussing that tomorrow on the pod, because that is wildly feasible. I don't think 5-loss Duke is getting in, but 12-1 James Madison might. So what's your outlook on that, and what do you expect the committee to do on Tuesday?
I just can't think that a room full of athletic directors are going to punish student athletes for the actions of a head coach, because every one of them are going to think, hey, what if that was my head coach that did that? What would happen then? And I do think in the end that's going to work. Now, listen, the hot thing on Twitter is like, hey, if Florida State got left out, you got to leave Ole Miss out. They lost their head coach.
No.
That argument is tired. It's silly because the reality is Florida State fell from 3 to 5. And I tell you right now that Ole Miss is not going to be a top 4 team. So that argument is pointless. And if Florida State made that playoff as a 12-team participant, they would have been number 5 and played the G5 opponent. So it's kind of apples to apples a little bit. It's going to be fun, but it's going to be an absolutely massive game in Oxford, Mississippi. Like I said, they had 68,138 for Florida. They might break that record for that game if the NCAA, who's selling tickets, whatever, allows them to do it. It's going to be absolutely massive. I mean, our game time code's probably going to get used for first-time buyers, promo code Locked On College if you want to go and get $20 off. It's going to be fantastic, and all of the Ole Miss fans are excited right now. And it's not because you lost a coach that is good, because Lane Kiffin is absolutely good. Nobody's saying he's not. But Ole Miss fans now get to put aside the drama of a toxic girlfriend and actually focus on what's important right now.
It's one of the wildest stories in college football in the last couple of years. I do want to close with this sentiment. I know Ole Miss fans don't really want to hear this. All of your anger can't be directed at Lane Kiffin. Most of it can. That's fine. Some of it has to be directed at the folks that have constructed this sport into a calendar that looks like this and forces this decision to be made now. This should all be playing out in February or the end of January once the season has been decided and we know who's won the national championship. If proper folks had their hands on the steering wheel, that's what would be taking place right now. I just got to put that out there.
Here's the other side of that. This isn't going on with John Sumrall. This isn't going on with Alex Galesh. This isn't going on anywhere else than Lane Kiffin, who has emotionally terrorized the Ole Miss fan base for about a month. So that's the reason this is going down, because whenever you have 68,138 people, a record crowd for a Florida game, and you win the game, and the first response is, well, you should have been here last week for the Citadel game. Stuff like that is why Ole Miss fans are as mad as they are about this. It's not necessarily that he's happening or that he's leaving. It's how it happened.
I get that. I'm just asking for a 5%, just 5% Ole Miss fans. I'd like your frustrations to be channeled towards, can we get a better calendar for the sport and avoid this? I mean, it's high drama. It's great for people like you and me. Things are going great, but on the whole, it's not actually good for the sport.
If you're going to have a transfer portal window for players, have a coaching change window for coaches after the season.
Boom. And put it at the end of January, and then signing day in February. Frankly, my ideal schedule, the season plays out towards the middle of January or so. You have a 1-week break, then the coaching carousel opens, and then you have National Signing Day sometime in mid-February. Then you open the portal, wait for it, pre-spring, and it's the only portal window. That's what I would do. But what do I know? Stephen Willis, Locked On Ole Miss. He knows a lot of things, and I don't know who's going to get hired to 2 other Power 4 coaching vacancies, including one in the SEC. Kentucky fired Mark Stoops. Do we even care? First, this episode brought to you by Game Time. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That is why the Game Time app is so clutch. Finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment that they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. I have used Game Time on several occasions for both sporting events and comedy shows. I got a great deal. I knew what to expect. All-in pricing's the best, and I had no problems getting into the event. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, Create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go, game time. Just a quick note before we get to this last segment. I recorded it before Will Stein was announced as the hire at Kentucky. My thoughts on the caliber of the job still stand. So not as splashy a news, but still rather important because you never know. Cal and Kentucky are available head coaching jobs. Mark Stoops and Justin Wilcox, they are done. I want to start with California Golden Bears. Their option could already be in-house. They have 2 former head coaches on their staff already. Nick Rolovich, who was at Hawaii and then was at Washington State and was fired from Pullman for non-football reasons. Whether you agree with it or not, it wasn't because he wasn't having success up there. That could be an option. Brian Harsin, the Boise State head coach, the Auburn head coach, once upon a time, he's on staff. That could be an option. It's notable that Rolovich has the interim tag, and Harsin is there as the offense coordinator. I don't know how that's received in the building. We'll see. Ron Rivera is their general manager. He was an NFL head coach and is now running that program. This is his first big move. His crosstown counterpart, who just beat his program and got Justin Wilcox fired, Andrew Luck, hired Tavita Pritchard. Now, I talked about on yesterday's show, I'm not crazy about that hire. I don't think that it's the best Stanford could have done. You bring in a guy like Andrew Luck to have presence and gravitas to attract a candidate who isn't a Stanford guy that feels like an easy hire who you know and are familiar with. So Cal is now in that position where they have some familiarity with Rolovich and Brian Harsin, and maybe they feel like those guys are equipped to lead their program. If they were to go outside, a name that has popped up a lot is Oregon defensive coordinator Tosh Lupoi. Now, the progress and recruiting for Oregon's defense over the last several years, and yes, outright strong production on the field, has been really good up in Eugene. I know that quite well. I cover it a little on the other show I host for this network. So I understand why he's a candidate. I also understand why there is serious hesitation, because over a decade ago, Tosh Lupoi was once, I believe, Recruiter of the Year at Cal. He has always had strong recruiting chops, but his departure from Berkeley was not well received. Do people remember that? Have they forgotten? That's for Cal fans and boosters to decide how you'd feel about that potential move. If they're able to clear that hurdle, I do think Tosh Lupoi is ready to be a head coach, as ready as you can be. This is a guy who's been, I believe, 2 different types of position coaches. He's been a defensive coordinator under Dan Lanning and under Nick Saban as well at Alabama. He has been to the NFL. He has put guys into the NFL for a program that definitely needs some life. He'd be able to go to Berkeley and look, I don't know exactly what their NIL situation is. And I think this would be an attractive job for Tosh because he's an alum. And you've got Jaron Kiabe Sangapolo-Tele. You keep him, boy, you're starting at a pretty high floor compared to some of the other rebuilds like what Kentucky's next head coach might have to deal with. But if he goes there, if that emotional hurdle is able to be cleared, I think he could have success. Because when you can bring in talent, boy, especially in the ACC where there aren't a lot of premier recruiters, that can be a significant part of the game. There have been some other ones suggested, and a name to keep an eye on here, in my view, is Sean Lewis down at San Diego State, who has been a head coach, who has been a Power 4 coordinator, who is getting a chance to be a head coach again, and he just went 9-3 with San Diego State. Their preseason win total was 4.5. It was one of my favorite over bets of the entire year because I knew he would do a good job. He's done even better than I thought, and they have been a darn good team. Now, the tricky thing is, would you be able to pull San Diego State's defensive coordinator along with him? Because the defense has been the driving force, and they have been nothing short of sensational. I know they just lost to New Mexico. I'll talk about that in a moment. But Sean Lewis at San Diego State, definitely a name to keep an eye on there. Speaking of New Mexico, I think Jason Eck would have been a home run hire, but New Mexico just extended him. So that gets even more expensive. And when Cal owes as much money as they do to Justin Wilcox, I don't suspect that they would be willing to pony up the extra buyout money that now exists for Jason Eck, who's a darn good football coach and will be a Power 4 head coach one day. I don't think they're going to go in that particular direction. But those are a few of the names. They're not the only ones, but those are a few of the names to keep an eye on there. I understand the appeal of Rolovich, and if he gives you the best chance to keep JKS, then maybe that's the right hire. But I would seriously look at Sean Lewis. I think Sean Lewis is good. I really do. But the appeal of Tosh Lupoi, totally understand it. So that's a glimpse at Cal. On the other side of the country, you have Kentucky, who, coincidentally, is also looking at an Oregon coordinator, offensive coordinator Will Stein. So Stein has only been Oregon's OC for 3 years now. He was at UTSA before that. He has produced 2 straight Heisman Trophy finalists in Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel. And Dante Moore, well, you can see the development he's had compared to his time at UCLA. It's been pretty exceptional. And Oregon is in the playoff for the 2nd straight season. So Stein's credentials readily available. He's a really good offensive coordinator. You, if you look hard enough online, can find a corner of the Oregon fan base that isn't as big of a fan collectively as Will Stein. I do not agree with those particular folks. I kind of get where they're coming from, but overall, I think Will Stein is a really good OC, a good play caller, creative, clever, good in the pass game, underrated in the run game. That's taken a big step forward this year. Here's the kicker, though. His parents went to Kentucky. He grew up going to games at Kentucky. He went to Louisville because he didn't get an offer to go play football at Kentucky, but he's from the state and he's got strong ties and grew up going to games at Kentucky. That's a pretty appeal. Now, my first reaction is probably similar to many of your guys' first reaction, which is, man, who wants the Kentucky job? Give me one trait, one trait about the Kentucky job that you wouldn't have said about the Indiana job before Curt Cignetti got there. Anytime these jobs come up, and look, I think for coaching outcomes, it's not fair to compare everybody to Curt Cignetti because he's just really, really good, and there aren't that many of those guys. From a blueprint standpoint, I think it is fair to say, why would someone take that job? Because if you're the right guy and you believe it's your time and you do things the right way, you can succeed. By the way, we live in an era, think about how many guys Will Stein has recruited to Oregon, by the way, and how many he'd be able to potentially take with him to Kentucky. And Dan Lanning's been very vocal about how many guys he's been able to keep at Oregon. He's never lost a starter to the transfer portal. It's a really good achievement. Boy, that'd be put to the test if Will Stein left. But we're living in an era where Vanderbilt just won 10 games in the SEC. I think that John Sumrall can work at Florida. I think Alex Golish can work at Auburn. I think Ryan Silverfield could even work at Arkansas. He's got more of an uphill battle. Don't tell me that any job in the SEC isn't worthwhile. Because Vanderbilt won 10 games. It can be done. The transfer portal has changed a lot in this wonderful sport. Now, other names that I have seen get tossed around there at Kentucky. Brian Hartline, the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. Talked about him earlier in the show a bit. I think that's someone Penn State is going to go after very strongly. Incredible recruiter, clearly a good offensive coordinator. Julian Sain's results, hard to argue with. I don't think you're pulling Sain away from Ohio State, but Hartline's credentials readily available. Let me throw this one at you. I don't know if you guys are ready to hear this, but you're going to hear it anyway. Dan Mullen just won 10 games in his first season at UNLV. 10 games. You know how? He put together a transfer portal roster, and they didn't play perfectly early on, and then he got it figured out, and they are in the Mountain West Championship game. And there's not a high chance, but a small chance. They've got a Power 4 win at least over UCLA, for whatever that's worth. There's a small chance they could wind up in the college football playoff. If James Madison loses the Sun Belt Championship game, Duke wins the ACC Championship game, if UNLV beats Boise State at 11-2, they might be into the college football playoff through the ultimate backdoor, trapdoor, side door. It's somehow all three of them put together. Dan Mullen at UNLV, been in the SEC, Not like he was horrible at Florida. He just wasn't good enough. But one at Mississippi State, well, where's Mississippi State job-wise compared to Kentucky? Same kind of rung. I think I'd rather have the Mississippi State job. But is there a huge gap in the transfer portal era? I don't know. So that name is really, really interesting. And you have two different, I'm curious to see where these places go. Tosh has never been a head coach before. Does he get the nod at Cal? Will Stein's never been a head coach before, but Dan Mullen has. Does that give Mullen the edge or Will Stein the edge in the Kentucky job? And is Dan Mullen even a serious candidate? These are just things I wonder. But do not forget, for any of these jobs that come open, that if you hire the right coach and you do things properly behind the scenes, any job can look like a much better job than it currently does. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.